Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. The remains of nearly 30 Civil War veterans found in funeral home storage are laid to rest. Wow, that is a long storage time to have folks in storage. That's wild. So let's jump into it. I'm glad that they were found. That is very interesting. And I'll read this to you a little bit and we'll kind of see what's going on. I'm glad that they were found and recognized, and I'm glad that they realized that they were Civil War veterans as well. So with that, let's get started here. Before we do, I want to throw out a special thank you to Lloyd Hilton. Thank you so much for that super comment. I really appreciate the support, Lloyd. It really does mean the world to me, and I appreciate you so very much. Lloyd Hilton, thanks again. I appreciate you. All right, so let's jump into this. Hit the thumbs up for me, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff, and let's go. All right, remains of nearly 30 Civil War veterans found in funeral home storage are laid to rest. For decades, the cremated remains on more than 24 American Civil War veterans languished in storage facilities in Washington, I believe. Let's move on. This just came out, so it's pretty interesting here. For several decades, the cremated remains of more than 24 American Civil War veterans languished in storage facilities at a funeral home and cemetery in Seattle, Washington. Wow, it's like, what are they doing way over there? That's wild. All right, so moving on. The simple copper and cardboard urns gathering dust on shelves only had the name of each of the 28 soldiers, but nothing linking them to the Civil War. Still, that was enough for an organization dedicated to locating, identifying, and interring the remains of unclaimed veterans to conclude overall several years that they were all Union soldiers deserving of a burial service with military honors. It's amazing that they were still there, and we found them, said Tom Keating, the Washington State Coordinator for the Missing in America Project, which turned to a team of volunteers to confirm there were service through genealogical research. Wow. It's something long overdue. These people have been waiting a long time for a burial. Most of the veterans were buried in August at Washington's Tahoma National Cemetery, along with the remains of some of the 31 Civil War spouses also found in the same storage facilities. In a traditional service offered to Civil War veterans, the historical 4th U.S. Infantry Regiment, dressed in uniform that resembled the Union uniforms, fired musket volleys, and the crowd sang the battle hymn of the Republic. Names were called out for each veteran and their unit before their remains were brought forward, and stories were shared about their exploits. Then they were buried. Among them was a veteran held at a Confederate prison known as Andersonville. Several were wounded in combat, and others fought in critical battles, including Gettysburg, Stone River, and the Atlanta Campaign. One man survived being shot thanks to his pocket watch, which he kept until his death, and another deserted the Confederate Army to join the Union forces. It was something just the finality, that's hard to say, of it all, Keating said, adding they were unable to find any living descendants of the veterans. Along with those buried at the Tahoma Cemetery, Keating said several others will be buried at Washington State Veterans Cemetery, and a Navy veteran will be buried at sea. The remains of several more Civil War veterans were sent to Maine, Rhode Island, and other places where family connections were found. Among them was Brian Johnson, born in Pawtucket in 1844. He enlisted at 18 and served as a hospital steward with the Union Army. He moved out west after the war and died in Seattle. Oh, that's why they're all over there. They didn't die in combat. They died after many years, and they moved somewhere. It all makes sense now. All right, died in Seattle in 1913. After his remains were delivered to Pawtucket City Hall, he was buried with military honors in his family's plot in Oak Grove Cemetery. Pawtucket Mayor Donald Greben said Johnson's burial service was the right thing to do. When you have somebody who has served in a war, but especially this war, we want to honor them, he said. It became more intriguing when you think of this individual that was left out there not being buried in his own community. And, I agree. It was important to remind people, not only in Pawtucket, but the state of Rhode Island and nationwide, that we have people who sacrifice their lives for us and for a lot of the freedoms we have, he said. Bruce Frail and his son Ben, both long active in the Sons of Union veterans of Civil War, were on hand for the service. Ben was also a reenactor in Johnson's service, portraying a Union Army captain. It's the best thing we can do for a veteran, said Bruce Frail, a former commander-in-chief with the Sons of Union Veterans and state coordinator for Missing in America Project. The feeling that you get when you honor somebody in that way is indescribable, he said, adding to that, to be able to honor somebody who has devoted so much to this country is an honor in itself. The task of piecing together Johnson's life story was left to Amelia Bovin, the constituent liaison in the Pawtucket mayor's office. A history buff, she recalled getting the call requesting the city take possession of his remains and bury them with his family. She got to work on Johnson's story, and it became the talk of the city hall. She determined Johnson grew up in Pawtucket, had 2 sisters and a brother who worked as a druggist after the war. He left to make his fortune out west, first in San Francisco and eventually in Seattle, where he worked nearly up till his death. It doesn't appear Johnson ever married or had children, and no living relatives were found. I felt like it was a resolution of sorts, she said. It felt like we were doing right for someone who otherwise would have been lost to history. And what a fantastic story. If you had anyone who served in the Civil War, and quite frankly on either side, right, the Confederate or the Union side, I'd love to hear. It's very, this is a big piece of our history. Both sides obviously felt like they were doing the right thing, and it's all part of our history. Very, very intriguing information out there, and I'm glad that these Union soldiers were found and laid to rest in an appropriate way. What a fantastic story. Many decades. I mean, that part's a little bit crazy, but glad that they found them. And I will say that the organization, the nonprofit that works on finding these folks throughout the nation, Lost in America, or what have you, was a great facility as well to be able to help facilitate this. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.